Imagine waking up one day, heart pounding with anticipation, as you prepare to step into a place where every face is new, every sound unfamiliar, and every word you speak carries the weight of your entire identity. Now, picture that you have journeyed thousands of miles from your homeland, carrying with you the rich tapestry of your culture, a culture woven with the vibrant threads of history, tradition, and the unmistakable cadence of your native accent. This is not a story about grand adventures or distant dreams, it's a story about the raw, often painful collision of two worlds, and the courage it takes to claim who you are when the very sound of your voice becomes a battleground. Meet Tariq Adeniyi, a young boy whose dreams of a bright future were born under the warm African sun of Lagos. For Tariq, learning English was not merely an academic pursuit, it was a passport to new opportunities, a bridge to a world he believed held the promise of acceptance, success, and friendship. After years of determination and countless hours spent perfecting his pronunciation, he boarded a plane to America, ready to embark on a journey that he hoped would validate all the sacrifices he had made. But as he stepped into his new classroom, the echoes of his past met an unexpected challenge that would shake the very core of his confidence. From the moment Tariq entered the room, the air was thick with anticipation. His footsteps echoed on the linoleum floor as curious eyes turned his way, some filled with genuine interest, others clouded by preconceptions and the silent judgments of a system unprepared to embrace difference. Here, in this melting pot of American culture, Tariq's accent, a melodious and proud reminder of his Nigerian heritage, suddenly became the focus of attention. What began as a hopeful introduction quickly morphed into an unforeseen test of resilience, as the room's energy shifted from curiosity to a palpable tension. In that charged atmosphere, every syllable Tariq uttered carried the weight of expectation. His voice, so carefully honed back home, now trembled under the silent scrutiny of classmates and the piercing gaze of an authority figure who seemed less interested in his potential than in his perceived imperfections. The teacher's words, meant to guide and inspire, instead landed like shards of ice on his already fragile spirit. A single remark about his accent, delivered with a forced cheerfulness that masked underlying disdain, set off a ripple effect that would soon engulf not only Tariq but the entire classroom in a storm of controversy. As Tariq listened, a mix of confusion and hurt swirled within him. Every whispered comment, every exchanged glance, chipped away at the confidence he had nurtured for so long. Yet, even as the sting of rejection threatened to silence his inner voice, a small spark of defiance began to glow in the depths of his eyes. It was the spark of a young soul refusing to be defined by someone else's narrow expectations, a spark that would ignite a journey of self-discovery and transformation, not only for Tariq but for everyone who would come to know his story. Imagine being in his shoes, feeling the pressure of a world that demands conformity while you yearn to express your unique self. Think about the countless moments when you've dared to speak up, only to be met with dismissive sneers or half-hearted applause. Now, multiply that feeling by the magnitude of navigating a foreign land, where even the sound of your own voice can make you feel like an outsider. For Tariq, the classroom was no longer just a place of learning, it had become an arena where the battle for dignity and acceptance was fought with every word he spoke. But this story is far more than a tale of struggle, it is a testament to the transformative power of resilience and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. In the midst of the pain and isolation, a glimmer of hope emerged. A small, sincere smile from a classmate, a subtle nod of encouragement from someone who recognized the beauty of his heritage, reminded Tariq that he was not alone in his fight. It was a silent promise that beyond the barriers of misunderstanding and prejudice, there existed a community willing to listen, to understand, and to embrace diversity in all its forms. As you listen to this story, let yourself be drawn into the intimate world of Tariq's daily struggles and triumphs. Picture the classroom where his voice was both his gift and his curse, a place where the simple act of speaking became a profound act of courage. Consider the immense challenge of trying to bridge the gap between two cultures, where the very nuances of language can either unite or divide. This is the story of a young boy who, despite the odds, found the strength to stand tall in the face of relentless adversity, and in doing so, sparked a movement that resonated far beyond the walls of his school. What does it mean to truly belong? How do we reconcile the differences that make us unique with the expectations of a world that often demands sameness? These questions are not merely academic, they are deeply personal, touching on the core of what it means to be human. Tariq's journey forces us to confront these questions head-on, challenging us to rethink our assumptions about language, identity, and the very nature of acceptance. It is a journey that invites you to explore not only the external conflicts of prejudice and discrimination but also the internal battles that shape our understanding of who we are. In the coming moments, you will witness the unfolding of a story that is as much about the power of education as it is about the courage to be different. You will see how one young boy's struggle with a simple accent can become a catalyst for a sweeping change in a community, sparking discussions that challenge long-held beliefs and inspire transformative action. This is not just a story about one classroom or one teacher, it is a story about the potential for every individual to rise above their circumstances and redefine what it means to truly communicate and connect. So, as you settle in to hear Tariq's story, prepare to be captivated by a narrative that weaves together the threads of pain, hope, and redemption. Let yourself be carried away by a journey that is as raw and real as the voices it amplifies, a journey that asks us all to listen, to learn, and ultimately, to embrace the richness of our diverse world. This is the beginning of a conversation about identity and acceptance that will linger in your mind long after the final word is spoken. Stay with us, and allow Tariq's courage to inspire you. Let his story be a reminder that every voice matters, and that even in the midst of hardship, the power of one person's determination can change the course of history. In this story lies the hope of a better tomorrow, a tomorrow where our differences are celebrated, and our voices, no matter how unique, are heard and respected. Tariq stepped cautiously through the heavy door of his new classroom, his heart pounding as the murmurs of unfamiliar voices filled the room. Back home in Lagos, he had spent countless hours perfecting his English, determined to excel in a language that was both his tool for connection and a window into a new world. Yet as he entered this American school, the sea of plain t-shirts and jeans replaced the vibrant dashikis and head wraps he once knew so well. His anticipation mingled with a deep, sudden homesickness. "Class, today we have a new student joining us," announced Mrs. Kendrick in a tone that attempted cheerfulness but betrayed an undercurrent of expectation. "Would you like to introduce yourself?" With a shaky breath, Tariq mustered his courage and stepped forward. His voice, though steady, wavered slightly as he began, "Hello everyone, my name is Tariq Adeniyi. I'm from Lagos, Nigeria, and I'm very excited to be here." His accent, rich and melodic, a part of his identity, caught the attention of everyone in the room. Some students leaned forward, intrigued, others exchanged whispers and knowing glances. Bianca, a bright-eyed girl in the front row, smiled in silent encouragement, while Andre, a boy at the back, snickered, trying to hide his amusement. Undeterred, Tariq continued, "I love mathematics and soccer. I hope we can all become friends and learn from one another." As he finished, a polite, hesitant applause filled the space. For a brief moment, relief washed over him. This was his first step into a new life, a life filled with both hope and hidden challenges. After taking his seat at an empty desk, Tariq sensed that the true test of his new environment was yet to come. His heart was still racing when Mrs. Kendrick's expression shifted ever so slightly, a subtle arch of her eyebrows, a thin line of disapproval on her lips. In that fleeting moment, Tariq's initial burst of confidence began to falter. Deep within Mrs. Kendrick, long-held biases and assumptions stirred, her mind was already racing through a series of prejudices. She wondered silently, will Tariq be able to keep pace with the rest of the class? How much extra attention would he demand because of that unmistakable accent? A tense silence descended upon the classroom as Mrs. Kendrick cleared her throat. "Thank you, Tariq," she said, her voice forced into a bright tone that never quite reached her eyes. We'll work together to ensure that everyone can understand you clearly. Clear English is very important in this class." The word struck Tariq like a blow. His shoulders slumped under the weight of her implication, and in that moment, the very sound of his voice, the essence of his heritage, became a source of anxiety rather than pride. Soon, whispers began to snake around the room. Some of his classmates mocked the sound of his accent behind closed lips, while others exchanged glances laden with a mixture of curiosity and pity. Tariq, feeling increasingly isolated, tried to focus on arranging his notebooks. Yet every hushed comment was like a needle pricking his skin, chipping away at the pride he had once taken in his Nigerian roots. He was painfully aware that his voice, once a cherished part of who he was, now marked him as different, a target for ridicule. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching longer than the last. Tariq's initial excitement faded into a gnawing fear of speaking up, as the classroom atmosphere grew thick with tension. At one point, his eyes caught a small, genuine smile from a girl with curly hair and freckles, Layla. That tiny gesture, though brief, was a lifeline. It whispered to him that not everyone judged him solely by his accent. Encouraged, he clung to that glimmer of hope as the lesson began. As Mrs. Kendrick moved on to the day's material, the air in the classroom seemed charged with an unspoken conflict. Tariq's classmates exchanged uneasy looks between him and their teacher, silently questioning the fairness of this new dynamic. Despite his internal turmoil, Tariq raised his hand when a question was posed about American history, a subject he had studied diligently. His heart pounded as Mrs. Kendrick finally acknowledged him. "Yes, Tariq," she said, her tone measured yet tinged with skepticism. With a mixture of determination and anxiety, Tariq began to recount details of the Declaration of Independence. Yet as his voice grew thick with nervousness, his accent seemed to become even more pronounced. When he finished, Mrs. Kendrick's response was less an acknowledgement of his effort and more a veiled critique. "That's almost correct," she said sharply, "but I'm not sure everyone understood you clearly. Was it Declaration of Independence or Declaration with a different emphasis?" Her words were laced with a mocking cadence that sent scattered giggles rippling through the classroom. The laughter was not the benign, friendly sound of classmates having fun, it was a cruel dismissal of Tariq's identity. In that moment, Tariq felt the crushing isolation of being different. The boy who had stepped into class with dreams of connection now found himself shrinking into his seat, his confidence evaporating with every snicker. The classroom, once a place of potential new friendships and academic growth, had morphed into a battleground where his very voice was under siege. As the day wore on, Tariq's struggle only deepened. Every time Mrs. Kendrick called on him, the anxiety coiled tighter within him. He began to dread speaking out, feeling that any attempt to express himself would only draw more ridicule. The vibrant spark that had ignited within him on his first day was now dimmed by a growing, oppressive fear, a fear that his accent, a symbol of his rich heritage, would forever be a source of derision. After school, Tariq trudged home, each step heavy with the burden of the day's humiliation. At home, the warmth of familiarity awaited him. The aroma of a hearty soup simmering on the stove offered a welcome contrast to the sterile, judgmental atmosphere of his classroom. His mother, Dr. Zahara Mensa, a respected linguist known for her advocacy of cultural and linguistic diversity, greeted him with an embrace that spoke of unconditional love and understanding. "Welcome home, my son," she said, her voice resonating with the same melodic quality of their shared Nigerian accent. For a moment, Tariq's face lit up with a genuine smile, a brief reprieve from the day's torment. As they sat down for dinner, the vibrant conversations that once flowed easily now came with pauses and hesitations. Tariq's mother noticed the subtle shifts, the way his eyes darted away when certain topics arose, the way his smile faltered when he spoke about school. Her maternal intuition sensed that something was deeply amiss. "Tell me, Tariq, how was school today?" she asked gently, her tone laced with concern. Tariq hesitated, his appetite diminishing as he mumbled a half-hearted, "It was fine." But his silence said more than his words ever could. As the evening progressed, the tension between mother and son grew palpable. Finally, with his resolve crumbling under the weight of accumulated hurt, Tariq broke down. "I hate it there, Mama," he choked out, tears welling in his eyes. "Every day, it feels like I'm losing a part of who I am." With trembling honesty, he recounted every painful moment, the teacher's scorn, the isolation, the relentless pressure to change his accent. His words tumbled out in a rush, a torrent of sorrow and frustration that left his mother's heart aching. Dr. Zahara listened intently, her eyes filling with both sorrow and fierce determination. In that intimate moment, a plan began to form, a plan to confront not just the individual instances of cruelty but the very system that allowed such discrimination to flourish. That night, under the soft glow of her desk lamp, she transformed her living room into a war room. Surrounded by academic papers and linguistic journals, Dr. Zahara prepared to challenge the entrenched prejudices that had marred her son's educational experience. She meticulously arranged printouts of research on multilingualism and the cognitive benefits of linguistic diversity, formulating arguments that were both firm and compassionate. The next day, armed with knowledge and unyielding resolve, Dr. Zahara Mensah arranged a meeting with Mrs. Kendrick. As she entered the teacher's office, her posture was impeccable, her gaze direct and unwavering. The air seemed to shift in response to her presence. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Carlton," she began, her tone calm yet resolute. "I'm Dr. Zahara Mensah, Tariq's mother, and I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today." Mrs. Kendrick's eyes widened momentarily as she shook hands with Dr. Zahara, a handshake that conveyed the seriousness of the situation. As they settled into their chairs, the tension in the room was almost tangible. Dr. Zahara wasted no time. "I'm here to discuss the treatment Tariq has received in your classroom, particularly concerning the way his accent and cultural background have been addressed." Her voice carried not just a mother's concern, but the authority of a respected academic well-versed in the complexities of language and identity. Mrs. Kendrick struggled to maintain her composure as memories of every offhand comment and subtle snide remark flooded back. I believe in maintaining high standards of English in my classroom," she stammered, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Clear communication is essential for success in the real world." Dr. Zahara's gaze was steady as she responded, "I understand the importance of clear communication, but let me ask you, what do you define as clear communication? Is it merely the absence of an accent, or is it the effective transmission of ideas and understanding between people?" Studies have shown that linguistic diversity enhances cognitive flexibility and problem-solving skills. In our increasingly globalized society, the ability to navigate multiple dialects is a tremendous asset. As Mrs. Kendrick attempted to defend her approach, Dr. Zahara methodically presented a series of research findings. She laid out studies that demonstrated the benefits of multilingualism and the arbitrary nature of what many consider standard English. "The pronunciation you deem correct is often just the dialect of those in power," she explained. "Language is not static, it evolves over time, shaped by historical events and cultural influences. In Shakespeare's era, accents we now consider refined were once deemed vulgar. When we dismiss an accent, we dismiss the rich cultural heritage behind it." The impact of Dr. Zahara's words was palpable. Mrs. Kendrick's confident facade began to crumble as she listened to evidence that challenged her long-held assumptions. Her voice faltered as she whispered, I had no idea." The room fell into a heavy silence, punctuated only by the sound of pages rustling as Dr. Zahara continued her impassioned lecture on the power of language as a vessel for identity. Then, in a moment that shifted the balance of power in the conversation, Dr. Zahara reached for her phone and quietly informed Mrs. Kendrick, "I should mention that I have been recording our conversation today. This is to ensure accountability and to foster a dialogue that leads to meaningful change." The color drained from Mrs. Kendrick's face as she realized the gravity of the situation. Her past actions, once hidden behind the veil of routine classroom management, were now subject to scrutiny beyond the walls of that office. "Dr. Mensah," Mrs. Kendrick managed to ask in a trembling voice, "what do you intend to do with this recording?" Dr. Zahara's tone remained measured, her resolve unbroken. "That depends on the outcome of our meeting. My hope is that we can use this as a catalyst for positive change, not just for Tariq, but for every student who has been made to feel less than they are because of their cultural identity." As the conversation continued, it became clear that this meeting was more than a private dispute between a mother and a teacher. It was a turning point, a moment when one parent's determination to protect her child sparked a broader conversation about linguistic discrimination in education. Dr. Zahara's carefully constructed arguments dismantled Mrs. Kendrick's rationale piece by piece. By the end of the meeting, Mrs. Kendrick's defenses had crumbled, leaving her to confront not only the harm she had caused Tariq but the systemic issues that had allowed such prejudice to fester. The recording of their conversation soon found its way onto social media, igniting a firestorm of public reaction. The video resonated with thousands, as viewers shared their own experiences of linguistic prejudice and discrimination. Former students, parents, and community leaders joined the conversation, exposing a deep-seated pattern of bias that extended far beyond one classroom. One particularly poignant comment read, "I always thought something was wrong with the way I spoke. Now I know it was never me, it was the system." Such voices, once silenced, now joined together in a chorus demanding accountability and reform. Local news outlets picked up the story, and soon the entire community was abuzz with calls for change. Emergency meetings were convened at Oakwood Elementary, where the administration found itself under intense pressure. Parents, teachers, and community leaders filled the school board meeting room, their faces etched with concern and determination. Heated debates ensued, with impassioned pleas for the dismissal of discriminatory practices and a complete overhaul of the school's policies on language and cultural sensitivity. After hours of deliberation, a comprehensive reform plan was finally approved. It included mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all staff, the establishment of a diversity and inclusion task force, and a complete revision of the school's language education policies. Mrs. Kendrick, now facing disciplinary action, was suspended pending her completion of an intensive re-education program aimed at dismantling her prejudices and fostering a more inclusive classroom environment. As these sweeping changes began to take root, the atmosphere at Oakwood Elementary transformed dramatically. The hallways that once echoed with whispers of mockery now buzzed with conversations celebrating diversity. Classrooms were adorned with vibrant posters showcasing different languages and cultures, a constant reminder that every voice mattered. Tariq, once overwhelmed by fear and isolation, slowly began to reclaim his place as an integral part of the community. One morning, as Tariq approached the classroom door with a newfound sense of determination, he paused for a moment to steady his breathing. The transformation was visible, the air was lighter, the space more welcoming. Mrs. Kendrick, now noticeably more open and warm, greeted the students with a gentle smile. The teacher's change was evident not only in her demeanor but also in her willingness to facilitate discussions that celebrated cultural diversity. During one class discussion, Mrs. Kendrick called for volunteers to share their weekend experiences. Tariq's hand shot up before he could second-guess himself. With clarity and pride, he described a traditional Nigerian dish that his mother had prepared, a dish rich in spices and stories of home. His accent flowed naturally, unburdened by the fear of ridicule. To his amazement, his classmates leaned in, their eyes bright with genuine curiosity. Layla, who had once offered him a brief smile of encouragement, asked about the ingredients, and another classmate, a boy named Marcus, revealed that his grandmother made a similar dish in her homeland. As the discussion unfolded, Tariq felt a warmth spreading through his chest. His voice, once the target of mockery, had become a bridge to understanding and acceptance. Mrs. Kendrick guided the conversation skillfully, drawing connections between different cultural experiences and encouraging students to share words from their native languages. The classroom transformed into a tapestry of diverse sounds, each accent and dialect celebrated as a vital part of the collective story. When the bell finally rang, Tariq's cheeks flushed with the glow of genuine accomplishment. As he gathered his things, a classmate he had never spoken to before approached him. "Hey, Tariq," the boy said, "that dish you described sounds amazing. Do you think your mom would share the recipe?" Tariq nodded, a surge of pride welling up inside him. In that moment, he saw his reflection in a window, a boy who stood tall, his eyes shining with confidence. No longer was he the outcast struggling to fit in, he was now a valued member of a vibrant community that embraced every facet of his identity. The transformation of Oakwood Elementary was a testament to the power of confronting ignorance with knowledge, empathy, and determination. Tariq's journey from a timid newcomer, burdened by the weight of discrimination, to a confident young man celebrated for his heritage had ignited a larger conversation. His story became a beacon for others, proof that even in the face of relentless prejudice, change is possible when courage meets compassion. In the weeks that followed, as reforms took hold, the school community began to heal. Former students and parents came forward with their own stories of linguistic prejudice, and new policies ensured that future generations would not have to endure the same pain. The online discourse continued to grow, with countless voices uniting to demand a more inclusive, respectful approach to education. Community leaders, inspired by Tariq's story, organized cultural festivals and language exchange programs, fostering a spirit of unity that transcended differences. As the sun set on another day at Oakwood Elementary, the corridors were filled with the joyful sounds of students speaking in a medley of languages, a living celebration of diversity. Tariq's transformation was complete. He was no longer defined by the mockery of his accent but by the richness of his heritage and the strength of his character. His journey had become a symbol of hope and resilience, inspiring others to embrace who they truly were. Before we close this chapter, remember that each of our voices carries a unique story, a story that, when shared, has the power to change hearts, minds, and communities. Tariq's journey is a reminder that the beauty of our world lies in its diversity, and that by standing together, we can overcome even the most deeply ingrained prejudices. As our story comes to a close, we hope that you feel the powerful impact of Tariq's journey, a journey that not only transformed a classroom but also ignited a community-wide conversation about acceptance, identity, and the courage to be unapologetically oneself. From the crushing weight of prejudice to the triumphant reclaiming of his voice, Tariq's transformation is a vivid reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, hope and resilience can spark change that reverberates far beyond the individual. His experience challenges us to rethink our own perceptions of language, culture, and the unspoken biases that can isolate and divide us. It's a story that speaks directly to each one of us, urging us to stand up against discrimination and embrace the diversity that makes our world so uniquely beautiful. Imagine walking into your own daily spaces, a classroom, an office, a community gathering, feeling entirely free to express who you truly are without fear of judgment or exclusion. That is the future we all deserve, and it begins with the small, brave acts of individuals like Tariq. His journey is not just about overcoming personal hardship, it's about creating a ripple effect that challenges systemic issues and inspires collective action. It invites us all to ask ourselves, how can we create spaces where every voice is celebrated, where every accent, every story, and every cultural nuance is not just tolerated, but valued? We want to hear from you. How do you think we can build more inclusive communities in our schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods? Have you ever experienced or witnessed moments where language or culture became a barrier rather than a bridge? Your stories and opinions are crucial in this conversation, and we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Every comment is a spark that can ignite further dialogue, understanding, and change. Let us know, what steps can we all take to ensure that every person feels seen, heard, and respected for who they truly are. If Tariq's story resonated with you, if you felt the surge of hope when his voice finally found its strength, then we ask you to become part of our growing community. Hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey of storytelling that not only informs but inspires. We are committed to bringing you narratives that matter, stories of struggle and triumph that reflect the real issues many of us face every day. Our channel is dedicated to uncovering these transformative journeys, and we believe that every shared experience enriches our collective understanding and fuels our determination to make a difference. As you click subscribe, think of it as joining a movement, a community where every story matters and where every voice can spark change. And while you're at it, don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. We have many more powerful stories lined up, each offering new insights and fresh perspectives on the challenges and victories of life. Looking ahead, what do you think the next chapter should focus on? Should we dive deeper into the untold stories of individuals who have battled systemic injustice in other areas of life, or perhaps explore inspiring narratives that highlight how communities have united to overcome adversity? Your input is invaluable in shaping our content, and we are excited to hear what topics you're most passionate about. Leave your ideas, questions, and suggestions in the comments below. Your feedback will help guide our next video, ensuring that we continue to bring you stories that not only entertain but also empower and educate. In the end, this isn't just the conclusion of one story, it's the beginning of an ongoing conversation. A conversation where every comment, every like, and every share becomes a testament to our shared commitment to build a more inclusive, empathetic, and understanding society. The dialogue we start here has the potential to extend far beyond the digital realm, influencing real-world actions and decisions that pave the way for a future where differences are celebrated rather than condemned. So, as we wrap up today's video, we invite you to take a moment to reflect on the message of Tariq's story. Let it inspire you to look at the world with fresh eyes, to challenge the norms that no longer serve us, and to contribute to the wave of positive change sweeping across communities everywhere. Your voice matters, and together, we can create a space where every individual is free to be themselves. Thank you for joining us on this deeply moving journey. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video with friends and family, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. What did you take away from Tariq's story? What changes do you want to see in your community? And what story should we tell next? We can't wait to hear from you. Stay tuned for our next video, a new story that will continue to challenge perceptions and inspire action. Until then, keep your hearts open and your voices loud. Together, we're forging a path toward a brighter, more inclusive future.